Today and good afternoon. This oversight hearing conducted by the Committee on Education, Public Safety, and the Arts is called to order at 2:01 Chamorro Standard Time. Notice of the hearing was disseminated to all local media outlets on September 10, 2024, with a second notice provided on September 15, 2024. Notice of the hearing was also made known on the Guam Legislature's website and on the Government of Guam Public Notices portal. This afternoon, the committee is holding an oversight hearing with the Department of Corrections to discuss the following items on the agenda: escapes, drug testing, contraband, recruitment and retention, facility issues, civil service cases and settlements, intelligence unit status, K-9 unit status, new Hagåtña Detention facility, and there will also be an opportunity for public comment if there is any. No colleagues. I'd like to welcome our community partners joining us today, to include the director, Fred Berdallo, and his staff. I'd like to go over now the general rules of conduct. Individuals testifying shall first be recognized by the chair speaking and shall state their name for record-keeping purposes. Questions and testimony shall be confined to the substance or nature of the agenda. Personal inference as to the character or motive of any senator or individual testifying is not permitted. The chair of the committee may order the removal from a hearing any member of a legislatura and Guahan who fails to observe proper decorum pursuant to the 37th Guam Legislature's standing rules. Any violation of this general rule of conduct will result in the removal from the hearing by the host. And I think it's obvious we called an oversight hearing because DOC keeps getting in the news, so wanted to give an opportunity for the director and his command staff to come before the committee to provide updates on these agenda item topics. And so, as we often do, Director, I'll defer to you to report on the agenda topics, and then we'll go into any questions or comments by the committee. Sidos Masi, and good afternoon.
Sidos Masi, thank you. Honorable Senator Chris Barnett, Chairman of Committee on Education, Public Safety, Arts, and Committee on Rules. My name is...
Dispensa, if we could have the Sergeant-at-Arms at Bakaigui swear in those. Anyone who plans on giving testimony, please swear in.
Please stand and raise your right hand. Under penalty of perjury, do you all affirm that any and all information you provide today, whether it be verbally, electronically, and in writing, be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth? Mr. Chair, under oath, you may proceed.
Sidos Masi, Sergeant-at-Arms. Okay, Director, please proceed.
Buenos, good afternoon. Honorable Senator Chris Barnett, Chairman of the Committee on Education, Public Safety, Arts, Committee on Rules, 37 Guam Legislature. My name is Fred Berdallo, Jr. I'm the Director of the Department of Corrections, and I appreciate scheduling this oversight to give all my staff and Department of Corrections an opportunity to share some of these very significant, important issues to the general public. We always want the confidence of the public. Department of Corrections, let them know we are hardworking as an organization. We want to strive to improve everything we do at the Department of Corrections. One of the things I want to just highlight here is that these issues, of course, are very important, especially when it comes down to escapes as the first topic, because you know, our main mission is to secure the people of Guam from these individuals who are serving their sentences. A majority of them are pretrial detainees, keeping them secure and preventing them from escaping. And since I come on board, I want to compliment my security force and the leadership who are doing their best with the situation that we have in terms of our manpower, which we're always striving to increase every budget year with your support and with support from the governor, Lieutenant Governor. The escapes, if I can just start on that. Since I come on board in August 2023, I have with me some information that at the time there has been a total from to present day about 2 attempted escapes that were successfully prevented, and then the rest, there was one that escaped. This was outside the facility at a hospital while they were on a medical run with our special enforcement team. And then the other here in the month of August, the other 2. One of them was a minimum out individual, and then the other 2 were pretrial detainees. So that's the total amount since I come on board. I was looking at previous periods and comparing that to 2022. And, you know, God bless former Director Bob Camacho, the late Bob Camacho, but he contended in 2022 from from April to June to July and October, spread out in that capacity, a number of escapes that had happened. Majority of them were pretrial detainees again. And, but the thing is the challenge, of course, just for the general public to know, is that in our facilities, with an overcrowded situation, the kind of security that is needed, we always let our security force know, do the best you can do, be vigilant, and we'll take the hits when it comes, you know, and learn from those lessons. And I just want to share the people of Guam that people have been held accountable for some of these actions. And I believe the inmates that escape are going to be held accountable too, because we have a good working relationship with the Guam Police Department and the Office of Attorney Generals. And that's with the issue of escapes.
Okay, actually, Director, since it's just me, let me just go in after every topic, and then I'll just, so I was at the, as you know, I was at the facility this morning, and I visited the dome where this escape occurred. And you know, the question in my mind is, and even when I saw the media report, was that ratio of one corrections officer supervising 80 inmates. And when I visited the domes this morning, it was one corrections officer supervising 78 inmates and detainees. And most of these are pretrial detainees, so that is not an improvement at all. But in speaking with some of the staff, what did improve was the way that these two individuals got out was they went around the side, and so that has been repaired and reinforced. But I guess my question is, are we able to, with the limited number of staff you have, do better than 80 to 1 ratio?
I have been asked, Senator, even with the media, about is that normal? It's not normal for a 1 to 80. We want more than that, and that's why we really need your support, the Guam legislature support, and of course the governor and lieutenant governor, to increase our recruitment, which is going to be indicated here, recruitment of more corrections officers and security staff to ensure that that ratio, you know, it's not 1 to 80, but we can have about 4 or 5 corrections officers present with that large amount of an increasing population. We also hope too, with the when this is brought to the attention for the people of Guam, that our largest population is pretrial detentions, you know, detainees. And that's a situation that we're going to have a conversation with the judiciary and with the Office of the Attorney General, because the more of these individuals are held, especially if they pass 1 year, they haven't been to trial, the more it creates that situation I had indicated here previously in front of this legislature, of potential legal challenges to that when they pass over a year or 2 years without any trial, you know.
I just want to note for the record, Director, and I'm not sure if your staff or you are aware of this, but during the budget process, I had attempted to proffer an amendment that would have required the Department of Administration to conduct a retention pay study for the Department of Corrections. Unfortunately, I don't know what my colleagues were thinking. It didn't get the support to pass into the budget, but I have drafted a bill today, and I plan to introduce it this afternoon, that will also do the same thing and have the Department of Administration study retention and salary of all law enforcement located at the Department of Corrections, because I know we did focus a lot on the Guam Police Department, but I believe that the Department of Corrections and the Guam Police Department are facing very similar challenges, very similar levels of responsibility, and so that's something that I want to introduce. But you and I just go and talk to the other senators so that they can support this very real effort, because in just kind of talking with you and the previous directors, and you know, coming from the media reporting on DOC, for me, a lot of the issues, I would say a vast majority of them are tied to a lack of manpower. For example, if you only have, you know, one officer to watch 80 people, I mean, you can't do the programs, you can't do a lot of the services, you can't do the work release, you can't even have freedom of movement for certain populations, because from my understanding, with if you don't have enough COs, there's a real controlled movement at the prison. And so the more corrections officers we have, not only is it safer for them, it's safer for the inmates and the detainees. And so I gave my commitment to your staff that this is something that I want to introduce and see through. so that we can address these recruitment and retention challenges that are facing the Department of Corrections.
And I appreciate that, Senator, because there are very important issues to look at, both recruitment and retention, and especially on the part of retention. When I first came on board on August 23rd, and thanks to former Director Joe Carbolito, I was already coming in when they were already selecting a cycle of about 30, and they graduated, and we went up to 180. Now we're at 174. And that 174, of course, some of the individuals have left. One was a federal investigation against them, resigned under adverse action conditions. The others, of course, were personnel on relocation off island. And I think I want to commend my staff and the leadership here, that a part of our retention, the success of our retention, has always been their relationships with their personnel, always ensuring that they take annual leave when they need to, or sick leave they need to recover and heal because they need to come back. And it's just that personal attention that each of the supervisors and the leadership has, which is already the #1 plus in retention. I came back from an off-island conference on Correctional Leadership Association. They say individuals leave the prison or corrections employees not because of the pay, but because of their supervisors and the conditions in the working place. And we're trying to improve that among all our staff that are employed with us.
Thank you. And just talking with some of the staff at the facility this morning, they offered different ideas. One of them was to increase the hazardous pay for Department of Corrections, which I believe is codified in law. But one of the things they did say that has improved, and I don't know if Major can verify this, is the payment of overtime. I remember prior to becoming senator, I'd done a lot of stories with KUAM News about overtime to DOC officers being as much as 7 to 9 pay periods behind. And so I'm hoping, I mean, the last hearing we had, you had said it was up to date, so I'm hoping that that is continuing. Is it?
Let me refer that question to
Okay.
Major Egan.
Yes, Senator, the overtime is up to date.
Okay. Thank you. That's Major Anton Ogan, by the way. Gotcha.
Okay, as we get to the drug testing, I noticed in the FY 2025 request, we did request for about 11,000 to do random drug testing, and that's for quality control, of course. And we certainly support ensuring that within the force, everyone, that we have a drug-free workplace at the Guam, at the Department of Corrections. Everyone knows what their commitment is to the integrity of sworn officers and as law enforcement, and I believe and have confidence a majority of our officers are keeping with those high standards and being drug-free.
I hope so, Director. I know that we've had a couple conversations about drug testing of the staff, but if you could please answer, how many officers have tested positive for drug use since you assumed command at DOC?
I believe that I was made aware, and these were internal affairs investigations, of course, right? That there were, I believe, two individuals that were positive on drug tests, I believe, positive on, after urinalysis, random, conducted with the Department of Administration.
And these two who popped positive, this was a result of the random drug testing?
That's correct.
Okay. And what is their status with the department?
Well, the process is, of course, we launch an internal affairs investigation, and then because it's testing positive, it's at my level of adverse action, and the process is to have the internal affairs submit their findings to me, and then we have give the employees an opportunity to respond to them testing positive. That's the part where they come in with their attorney, their lawyer, their representative, and then they review the internal affairs, and they may challenge it. A lot of times, in my experience, they're looking at the internal affairs or they're explaining why they tested positive. Sometimes it can range anywhere from a physician's prescription of them taking the drug, or it could range to a different thing of what would give a positive from something that they took, a substance that they took as part of it. And it's been known, it's in people weightlifting, that there's certain things that they're
I got a question that one,
but I
Director.
don't wanna-
There's a lot of research
yeah.
and intensive studies
Yeah.
that have been done on the excuse of the
Yeah.
weightlifting supplements.
Yeah.
And so I would caution you to
Yeah. But what I
maybe
want to
research that a little more.
What I want to say, the bottom line, Senators, our AG is always our advisors, always advises me before I make that determination what the adverse action is going to be in. And that's why, for my decision on these cases that pop positive, I want to make sure that we don't get into a situation where now we're before the Civil Service Commission. We lose a lot of money on the settlement because they win on a technicality. So I'm very, again, with these cases, I rely on the advice of our AG, who looks at the internal affairs investigations and looks at the explanation that these individuals gave.
Did you ever have an officer check into the Lighthouse Recovery Center? How long did the officer stay there? And is this an officer who had tested positive for illegal drug use?
I can confirm from the information I was given that one of the officers that tested positive went into the Lighthouse Recovery. Of course, you know, when individuals have requested, can we get that information? The Lighthouse Recovery has their own policies and procedures to keep everything confidential, and I can't get any of that information from them.
Okay, has this officer been tested since his first positive test result?
I believe so, yes.
Okay, and
Negative.
okay, so you're planning to conduct more random drug testing?
That's correct.
Yeah.
And I believe we have about, I noticed that we put in the request about 11,000 requests for drug testing.
I know we've had this conversation a little bit before offline, but if you could just state for the record what your interpretation of zero tolerance for law enforcement and that policy is?
Yes, you know, thank you for asking me that question, because I look at the particular language that's inside the Government of Guam rules and regulations, and of course my experience in internal affairs and as a different chief of police, you know, we always use the word even before, you know, before the media or even looking at the policy, that the use of illegal drugs is not tolerated in the Government of Guam, especially in law enforcement, not tolerated. But what they don't have in that language is a percentage added where it's a 0%, zero tolerance, or 10% tolerance, or 50% tolerance. They don't have a numerical value to it. We just say it's not tolerated. Now, some people would argue and say, well, not tolerated means zero. You know, and that's the other argument. I anticipate that, right? But the whole thing, again, is that this policy that Government of Guam had was at the same time, when this policy was brought up, it was the same time they had what they call a safe harbor provision for all Government of Guam employees. Law enforcement were part of the safe harbor, which is the same thing as the military today. A safe harbor provision is that if any of them come up and say they have a drug problem, they won't be held to any adverse action, and they would have time to go and address that drug problem they have, whether they have to seek therapy or some medical stuff that they had. That safe harbor, of course, a while back in legislation and public law was taken away from all law enforcement officers. So that's why about that question about zero, you know, there's a zero tolerance and stuff and all that. As perfect as we want a zero tolerance, as I said in the adverse action procedure, when they're in front of their lawyers and they're looking at the internal affairs, the perception maybe we're not making it zero tolerance, but what changed that could have been what was said in that adverse action setting with their representatives looking at the internal affairs and look at procedures that were conducted.
I only ask, Director, because I've been in receipt of you know, grumblings from your staff about, and I'll just be general, right? Yeah. So let's say I'm a corrections officer and I'm called for a random drug test, and then I test positive for a substance that's not approved, and then I tell you something like, oh, I've been having anxiety, and so I wanted to see what it was like to be on this prescription, so I just tried it out. I don't have no doctor's order. Or, you know, for example, I am summoned for a random drug test, and I test positive, but then I tell you, oh, that's because, you know, I'm on these protein powders or whatever, which, again, I have to dispute that because I know a lot of people who work out and are in law enforcement and they're not testing positive, right? So just with those general scenarios, what would, how would you proceed with that? Because I think that's where we're getting the grumblings from the staff is that, law enforcement, and we talk about 0 tolerance or 10% tolerance or whatever you want to say. I think most of the law enforcement who have been in and who are familiar with the responsibility that they have know that, for example, those 2 instances don't fly with a lot of the career law enforcement who, when they wear the badge, they know I'm not going to smoke weed, I'm not going to pop pills, I'm not going to, shoot up meth because I'm wearing this badge.
Yeah, and my response, I guess, to those that are grumbling, they're not in the process to be a witness to an adverse action proceedings when that employee's attorney is there and indicating some information that changes the circumstances that will make our attorney advisor from the Office of Attorney General says, okay, this isn't going to be too solid. It may be challenged, and there'll be a what do you call that? There might be a technicality here that might be challenged in Civil Service Commission, and even court where it's more on the burden of the government to prove when they were tested positive that there will be no issues of casting some doubt there, right? And there's a lot of research that says false positives have happened, but those individuals those employees, have sad to say, that are grumbling, aren't in that position to look at these this process there, right? But I said, I don't fault them because they see it from where their view is at, as, if what happens if the same thing happens, to a friend, to someone that was close to them, why were they terminated, and is there an unequal treatment? But I just want to share those employees who are saying that I'm doing a fair, we do a fair process and stuff and all that. One of the things too, even to the point, is that in these adverse action proceedings, I've always made it known that I want their command to come over to let me know what's their disciplinary history too, right? Because if their performance was really good, and they were always dedicated and coming in 24/7 most of the time working, then, majority of the times from my experience, being in a drug investigation unit or being in a situation to look at employees are always absent or never around, and something's wrong with them. It's already a sign. Maybe we should, and previous directors have ordered a drug testing in that kind of employee.
With that being said, let me then ask you if any of the officers who had tested positive for any prohibited drugs had previous disciplinary actions or instances on their record.
From what I was briefed, especially the individuals that we're talking about that came before me, no, there was no sign of their command saying these people are never reliable or never around, right?
So neither of these officers were ever in the news before for anything untoward or unbecoming?
Oh, okay. Without disclosing the identity because it's confidential, I believe one of them may have had a run-in on adverse action, but won that case and was reinstated back into the Department of Corrections.
Thank you, sir. I think just from my viewpoint, it becomes a slippery slope when it's a small island, small department. Yeah. People are going to talk, people are going to know things, and you don't want this perception that, if you test positive, just say you're working out or, whatever. I want to ask your opinion on the usage of cannabis with your officers. Have you received any kind of legal opinion or legal guidance from any attorneys about whether or not Department of Corrections officers are allowed to consume cannabis?
I know there was recent discussion I had because I think Senator Parkinson had some legislation, I believe, that was there. So I'm still...
Law enforcement was exempted from that. You're talking about the recent bill that passed relative to drug testing and pre-employment.
Yes, regarding that. So I have to review that again, but taking a look at that. It's even in our line of duty, you have to be very well alert. Anything can happen. Someone can get hurt if you're coming to work under the influence. I believe there's another legislation that might be discussed in the legislature that involves use of drugs while inside the Department of Corrections under the influence. So hopefully that might address some of the,
Okay, so what I meant by my question was, have you received any guidance that, let's say, for example, you conduct a random drug test of officers and one comes back positive for cannabis, and then you have the officer then arguing, or maybe your attorneys who are giving you all this advice say, oh, well, it's legal.
oh, right now I haven't gone in depth advice on that, but I'll just tell you from my perspective here is that it hasn't been removed from the federal scheduled drug. So anyone that is comes positive in this random test and it comes out THC will be investigated with the internal affairs.
Okay, thank you, Director. And we can move on to contraband.
Okay, with the contraband, I also was briefed and provided information that we've had a number of them, of course, contraband that have been seized, a total of 64, and this starts from October of 2023, and they range from, of course, different stuff from, they could be a shank or a weapon, it could be drugs. Recently, some of them are suspected drugs, ice, and the most I can just say is that what gives us a little bit of an edge, that we can use in order to use countermeasures under contraband, is every now and then random shakedowns by the security, which will do this, more vigilant among the officers, and of course, and even Major Lozama can say this as part of security, the intelligence unit that we have, in them getting the trust of individuals to sort of like give us any sort of tips of what's happening. That's how we encountered even that last one where a firearm where we went into a lockdown for 3 days. That was due to information that our intelligence unit used to look at that, which was successful finding of that firearms. A lot of these, of course.
Mr. Director, sorry to interrupt. Was the firearm determined to be operable?
I haven't gotten that information, but I look at any sort of like firearm. Of course, the description of that. Of course, I trust that the Guam Police Department has it right now under investigation, and it's been sent to the Attorney General's office. So they're still continuing the adjudication process with this, right? And I believe they're looking at charging the inmate with possession of that firearm.
Okay, well, I put contraband on there. It's a topic we have every oversight hearing, but I was troubled by the recent news. There was one inmate death, and fentanyl was discovered in the autopsy, correct? And that was in June?
Yeah, we had one death, and it was the medical examiner, the autopsy came back that fentanyl was present.
And was this individual incarcerated at DOC, or was this a new intake, and then they subsequently passed?
I believe this was on our death of custody investigation. Okay. I believe this individual was incarcerated at the Department of Corrections.
And there was a recent situation where an inmate or detainee had collapsed and was transported to the Guam.
We have another continuing death in custody that we're awaiting the medical examiner's autopsy, so we can't provide any answers to family members until that autopsy comes back.
And I did see a media report where family members of the second individual were sharing with the media concerns that there was a lack of information. So just for the record, can you explain the protocol if, I have an immediate family member, maybe, let's say someone has a relative in the Department of Corrections, and they become ill, then when do you contact the family, and what's your protocol?
Well, this is the process. Once an inmate, let's say, collapses or we have an injury, and then we have to call for an ambulance, the watch commander contacts all the higher-ups from the warden, and they'll notify me. And what happens is when the individual is transported to the hospital by ambulance, we also, on our procedures, call the Guam Police Department in the event this might be criminal, so they can look at the scene of where the individual was at. So the Guam Police Department is contacted so they can get a case number and do their investigation. Now, what we do is our higher-ups from the warden coordinate also with the Guam Police Department when they're going to where the hospital where the person was taken to. And should the person be pronounced dead at that hospital, our higher-up, our warden coordinates again with the Guam Police Department and with the doctor at that place to ensure that who's on that visiting list, who's a next of kin, is contacted. What the warden has expressed to me just earlier before this hearing there, Senator, is what they don't want to do is they don't want to, part of not the protocol is they immediately call family members, go up to the hospital, and then we have a security situation.
Yeah, maybe you could elaborate on that more, because I did talk to the warden about this protocol this morning. And again, if you could just state for the record why you don't say, hey, we're going up to GMH with so-and-so.
Because it's an emotional thing, Senator. You know, family members, of course, when they hear their loved one, of course, it's very stressful enough that their loved one is here, incarcerated here. And then they'll just think they want to, and it's in our culture that we want to be with our family member, right? And sometimes that can get, it can get a little bit out of control without any security people being there, not expecting that. And then of course, we don't want that to happen. So that's why a lot of our protocol is just to limit the contact with the Guam Police Department, with the doctor who's there, and then determine who would be called so that they can ensure that it doesn't get out of control in terms of, a whole large group or something happening at the place where the hospital is at.
Did you receive a timeline about when the autopsy of the second individual will be conducted?
We haven't had any timeline given to us, but we're always in contact and sharing the information of the families concerned with the Guam Police Department's chief and with the Officer Attorney General on the request from this family.
Okay, and so going back to the first death in custody, you said that the autopsy revealed fentanyl. Were there any other drugs that were determined to be found?
I believe I can recall crystal meth.
Okay. So we don't know conclusively if the death was caused by fentanyl or meth, or was that the ruling from the ME?
It was just ruled that it was found in the individual in the death in custody that inmate system. So from there, the Guam Police Department are aware of that, and the Office of Attorney General. So they'll determine where to go from there in terms of that.
Because we're hearing just anecdotally, and I've heard from federal sources as well that some meth might contain fentanyl. So you aren't able to say conclusively if what we're seeing in DOC is fentanyl in a pill form that's being used, or are they using meth that might be laced with fentanyl?
Yeah. There's always that possibility. As a matter of fact, we're so cautious now that I'm very serious that even it may be a pack of cigarettes thrown over the fence, but cigarettes have been laced with PCP from some of the information I've been given, that's happening in other jurisdictions. So there's always that possibility, and that's why I take it serious that whenever any contraband, whether it's cigarettes or any item thrown over the fence or found that's part of the contraband, that the officers use caution, and that's why we had a lot of our force go through the Narcan training in anticipation that something could be laced with fentanyl. And
you have Narcan at the Manila facility?
Yes, we do.
Hagåtña?
Yes.
Okay. Have you had any of the contraband that was seized, whether it's meth or anything else, tested chemically?
I believe that whenever we confiscate any of these items, the drugs, the Guam Police Department takes it from there.
Yeah, they conduct the field test, right? Which is that's the simple test to determine, okay, it's meth.
Yeah.
But does that test also, is it able to read if there's fentanyl?
I'm not aware if that's able to.
I'll follow up with you.
Yes.
Okay. Yes, ma'am. Please say your name for the record, Major.
Major Lozama, sir. I'm the operations commander. So when they do confiscate the contraband, the drugs, they do contact GPD, but all of those are custody receipted. And then it's bagged and tagged. It's relinquished to GPD, but they don't automatically test the drugs right there.
Right.
You know, it's very risky, especially with what kind of drugs we have now. I just want to add on, going back to what you were asking, the deaf in custody, just so you know that
Madam Major, which one are you referring to?
the ones that that passed away, like,
So
for example.
the recent two.
Yes.
Okay.
You got to understand that when the inmates or the prisoners submit their visitation lists, sometimes they don't include all the family members. And also their next of kin, they're not the ones calling about the one that passed away. It's the other people who are claiming they're the child, or they're that's their father that passed away. However, we cannot really determine it because the prisoner did not put out their visitation list and it hasn't been approved. So when they do take the prisoner to the hospital, you got to understand that the intensive care unit is small. So as soon as the medical doctor informs security that we need to call the family members due to the fact that he may not live long, then that's when we start calling the family members, if we can locate them. Many times we have a hard time locating family, that we even had to call the mayor's office because they're not from Guam. So the mayors, sometimes they help us. So I'm just letting you know that it's very difficult to contact their family. They don't even answer the phone, you know. So many times we're checking the visitation list, and they're the only ones, whoever's on that visitation list, they're the only ones that's authorized to visit the prisoner in the hospital. If the prisoner doesn't list the visitors' names, they're not authorized to go and visit. Unless our warden says, okay, if they prove themselves that they are the child of the prisoner, then it's up to the warden or the director to approve them to visit their dying relative. And also the Attorney General also is advised about what's going on. We do always get a hold of him and let him know what's going on. But it's advisable that if they're in a life support system, it's not up to us to pull the plug. It's up to the family. That is the recommendation. And of course the director, but coming from the Attorney General, it's really up to the family to avoid any other issues. So just sharing that with you.
Thank you for that, Major, because I've had family, reaching out to me, and they say one thing, and the media reports another thing. That's why I wanted to get on the record so everybody knows what is the protocol, what is the policy when someone is being transported to the Guam Memorial Hospital, and who gets contacted, who's allowed to be contacted, who's allowed to visit. So I thank you for sharing that.
Yes,
on the
sir,
record.
and also to include that, it's really shocking to hear that when the prisoners in prison, they don't look for them. But all of a sudden, when they're sick, they're worried about them. But at the time they were in prison, they're not worried about them. That's what I'm saying. For some, I'm not saying for all.
Thank you, Major.
That's just sharing.
We're going to make another video of you. Director?
Okay, for the recruitment and retention, I'll have Major again respond because he's working hand in hand with our personal officer, Val Pangilinan, and us trying to get more of the corrections officers on board. And Chief Kanata, who's also here from parole, can attest to, because he got 2 new parole officers. He's happy with that, right? But I'll start with Major again. Major, you can say about the recruitment and retention.
So on the recruitment side for correction officers, Senator, we have 28 vacancies this fiscal year. We got a list of 20 from DOA.
20 eligibles?
20 eligibles. There was I can go over the numbers. I have it here on my phone because I asked DOA. So this is just some numbers that we got from Department of Administration. For FY 2023, we have a total of 109 applicants. 23 of them passed the test, 21 failed, and 65 did not show up for the test. In FY 2024, we had 45 applicants, 20 passed, 14 failed, and 11 did not appear for the test at all. So we got that the FY24, we got the 20 interviewed. We called them up. Only 15 showed up for the interview. The other 5 declined to be interviewed. Out of that, we chose all 15. Then 1 declined. Right after that, he changed his mind. We currently have about 7 that have already cleared the drug testing part out of that 14. We have about 2 more we're trying to locate because they're not responding to DOA's call to come and take the drug test. So we've actually sent emails to them saying, hey, DOA is trying to get a hold of you. But we're hopefully in the next week or so we'll have the remainder. I was hoping it'd be 7 more, but it looks like we may have about 6 more. 1 or so may end up declining. And then we'll start our academy and, get them on board. I know in the next fiscal there's also authorization for another 20 more. The problem now is it's not necessarily that we have the vacancy. We have the vacancies and we have the funding. It's just that we don't have enough applicants. Right now, if you can see the paper, and I sent it to you, I WhatsApp it to you. We have pending right now at DOA. There's pending 47 applications that DOA is trying to go through the evaluation process, and out of that, of course, they'll try to do a test on some of them, whoever qualifies. But yeah, right now I think a lot of it is just we're not having a huge amount of people applying for the position. But we're trying right now. We're looking at 14 for now.
Yeah, I've heard I was hearing similar things from the Guam Police Department, as nobody wanted to be a police officer anymore. And so the administration instituted the 25% retention pay, which I had tried to do for the Department of Corrections in the budget process. So unfortunately, it wasn't supported by enough of my colleagues. So I plan to introduce the bill, but for me, outside of pay increase, hazardous pay increase, what other ideas do you have? Because I think how we solve this is we need to make it attractive for people to want to become corrections officers, right? And I mean, when they're watching this hearing and they're hearing about 944 prisoners and you're watching 80 people, it doesn't sound very attractive, right? So I think we need to fiddle with the compensation scheme, but the problem is, like with the Guam Police Department, we really have to make sure it's for GPD and DOC, because in my mind, it is GPD and DOC that are have a lion's share of the responsibility, face a lot of the things that other law enforcement doesn't, and so I want to do for DOC what we've done for GPD. So I want to ask, what other ideas do you have?
Well, Senator, the pay is always important. Of course, nobody's taking this job for. The pay is actually very important. Even during our interview, some of them that got interviewed, we asked them, well, why are you coming here? Why are you applying it? So said pay. The pay was actually, so the pay is good. Not as good as other law enforcement. Like I said, we just lost, I think, 1 more to fire. Just last week, we lost 1 to fire. We have a few that are pending GPD. They've also applied for GPD to go there. But in addition to the pay, I think also the environment. With the overcrowding and the limited resources that we have, I mean, you saw the conditions the officers are working in. Buildings that are crumbling, air conditions are not working, plumbing is terrible, another issue. And you're in there for 12 hours to 16 hours dealing with these inmates. I mean, it gets stressful. You don't get to go home, you miss a lot of functions. Some of them, especially the younger ones that have left, a lot of it is they just get exhausted. I mean, the 12 hours for 3 years, 4 years, they lose touch with their family. They have family issues, and then so they just go off to. Some of them have even taken a pay cut just to have a peace of mind on their job, right? Because they cannot the stress of working in that prison. And I think the only way to solve that particular issue, of course, is to get a new facility. But right now, we're 900 some people, and they're packed in there by sardines. And then, when something happens, the first thing they want to do, the public wants to do, is hang the officer. But it's not. The one officer can only do so much with 40 to 80 to 70 people, and just like those escapes, some of them were actually scared. One of them actually wanted to resign before the investigation because he just felt he was going to be railroaded because someone escaped. But that's not the case. You look at the facts, and if there's things he could not avoid, then you know, sometimes it just happens. But I think one of it is the facility, and of course, looking at the pay. Maybe upping the standards a little bit, because we have a lot of officers who have higher education. They're getting post-certified, but yet in their job, in their calculation of their pay scale, because the job position does not have any education requirements, when they do the formula to determine the proper pay grade, DOC has not gone anywhere. You know, just, 2 years ago, DOA reevaluated a lot of the law enforcement, and in addition to the 18%, they got pay grade, adjusted pay grade from one letter to another because of their education requirements. Whereas DOC kind of just stayed there. We flatlined.
Why is that?
Because our positions are since 1980s.
So you're telling me that we need to do a pay grade?
We have submitted to DOA, but they have to, you know, putting some college credits. Like, for example, for a CO2, most of our officers have 15 to 20 college credits, but for CO2, there's no requirement for the education. So if you apply, it's only an I level, whereas in GPD, it's a J, because you have higher requirements. So when they do the Hay study calculation, education goes into that formula, and it can rise up their pay grade. But for DOC, none of our positions require that. So some of our officers, again, why get an associate's and stay with DOC when you can go to GPD and make more money, or go to customs or fire and make more money with that education? You know, you get paid for it. And we have some that went to parole, because parole requires a bachelor's degree. So why stay on the DOC side and have a bachelor's degree when you can go to parole and get two letter grades jump, right? And work 8 hours, regular, normal hours. So I think we have to look at all those position descriptions. GPD's is codified, ours is not.
Okay.
You know, but
Well, let's work on that together.
that's one thing probably to look at to attract more.
Okay. So DOA, and then factoring in the education into the pay grades for DOC.
I just want to chime in on recruitment because, you know, I used to be a recruiter for the Marines, right? And there are two approaches we use in a recruitment strategy. One is whenever a person walks into an office, are you here to be a Marine because of the pay? Because you'll get it right across over there, the Air Force and the Army, the Coast Guard. You're just going to get the same pay. Or are you here for an intangible purpose because of the pride, right? And you want some sort of like self-respect in terms of where you're coming from. That deals with marketing, you know, and a lot of the military services put some funding into marketing. Not saying that we need now a budget to market the Department of Corrections, but we have some individuals who are talented that put out some of those, sharing some of those things, right? Being us coming into the community, us being a recruitment representative when we're in the community as our leadership is, as they're part of the community members. When Major's off, she's in there and she talks to people of who might be interested in joining our reserve program or who wants to apply. And it's us just being able to be available out there. I was in Spokane, Washington, and I actually saw on a mall an actual office where the sheriff department has a thing there. At Micronesian Mall, they used to have a Cape office there, and that was like a outreach into the community. So some of the effort initiative, when you just talk about recruitment in itself, if someone's going to do a study on Department of Corrections recruitment or the Guam Police Department's recruitment, where's that outreach and how many times did you do those high school visits or those home visits or dialing and smiling the list of high school students who are just about to graduate before the military recruiter gets them. And that's that was my daily time. I had someone come into the recruiting office that says, you have to have at least 3 people you recruit here in Louisiana a day, right? Now we don't have a recruitment office for the Department of Corrections. Our recruitment is pretty much done at Department of Administration when they announce those continuous announcements there. But that's just, I just wanted to explain that that's part of the recruitment. For the retention, I'm exploring the possibility of a career planner within the Department of Corrections, and that person's function is to look at each of these corrections officers and say, where are you at right now in your career, you know, and where are you going right now? Have you gone to school? And why are you not advancing? You know, and that's a position that is critical, even in the military branches, a career planner, because there's been individuals who are just in the same rank for 19 years or 30 years. They never advance, and you know, to me, by then they should have already advanced into the other leadership positions.
You know, it's funny you mentioned that because I attended last Friday the promotion ceremony for the Guam Police Department. They promoted a few officers from PO2 to PO3, and one of the remarks that the chief had made was that some of these officers had been police officer 2s for 20 years, and that for me does not help at all with retention. I mean, thank God they stuck around that long, but where are you guys with promotions?
Same thing.
Same thing. Thank you, Major.
Same as GPD.
Okay.
Sorry.
No.
Major
Yeah.
Luzam again.
Yeah. No, already they know you. So
Can you hear my version of retention?
I would love to.
Okay, Major Luzam again. I worked there 35 years of service, and also being a CO1, went up through all the ranks. DOC, when I first started, was a very horrible place. But why I worked there was to work to get paid and also learn the job. I went through a formal academy with college credits at that time, okay? That was at GCC, a formal academy. The time we graduated and started working at DOC, those inmates were very dangerous. Those will actually stab officers or kill them, okay? So the atmosphere there, they weren't focused on us getting our college credits. They're more of, we need to get relieved. That's what they were looking for. We were on 8-hour shift, which is the best shift, because that allows for the officers to go to college. I have nothing against college, but right now we're short of manpower, 12-hour shift, 900 plus, over 950 prisoners. You need bodies there. You need them there, not just to monitor all 950 plus clients, but also the perimeter, because it is a very dangerous job. And I cannot even stress, I cannot even tell you much, but I can tell you we need that. We need that support for more manpower. We need it immediately, because these prisoners are almost like patients in a hospital. So we're also watching behavioral clients. There are added responsibility. And we're working on in the current condition of the department, we're still surviving. We're trying our best. But you're asking about retention. One, we need to hire more officers so that we can go on 8-hour shift. Number two, of course, we need a new facility. Number three, to look at the pay as well. Number four, the officers did hear that GPD are getting their bonus every 3 years, $10,000. In Arizona, from what I recall, they do get bonus every year. It's $1,000 a year.
Who, ma'am?
Arizona, Phoenix. That's where I've
Corrections?
seen corrections
Okay.
officers get
Thank you.
$1,000 bonus every year. Not sure if that's for their uniform as well, but every year they get that. You know, the way I see it, yes, college is good, but when do they find the time to go? It's hard. That's what they keep saying. When do they have the time to study and rest? They need their me time, they need their family time. Yes, 8 hours is the best because their body needs to rest. But if you keep them at 12-hour shift, after 8 hours, they cannot perform effectively because already their energy level is going down. After 8 hours, we're not built like a machine, and that's what they need to understand. But we're going to go ahead and we're going to work and do our best and wait for more manpower to come in and to watch all these prisoners. Okay? We have no problems with watching thousands of prisoners. We just need the facility, the equipment, and the manpower. That's what we need. But if you lack any of these, it's gonna have problems. And that's the truth. I'm just saying, 35 years experience frontliner. And not just behind the desk. I actually go and check. You know, call them up, check. It's heartbreaking to hear all the incidents constantly happening. But that's what we face, is because there's so many, and there's only a little of us, 174 versus 939 was the last count I saw. 174, but some of them are military deployment, calling out sick, and those going on leave or training. That's what's reducing us. And then half of that are assigned to support section, while the other half is assigned to platoons for both Manilao and Hagåtña. So that's what I'm saying. It's like, imagine you watching your own child, how difficult it is to just watch one child versus one officer watching 80 with 80 problems, But, trying to make sure that they don't, leave our place, That's what I'm grateful for, that not all of them left, Most of them were kept in, but for some reason those guys left, but now they're facing the consequence of leaving the department and being charged for escape. I'm just grateful that not everyone left, and grateful that there's no major incident where an officer gets hurt. That is what I'm concerned about. Thank you.
Me too, Major. I mean, if you just do the math, the ratio, right? I mean, anything could happen at any time, and it's a credit to the officers to do the job that they're doing, despite the large number of it. The report I got this morning was 944 population and this was interesting to me because, I even had introduced a bill about pretrial release. And so just in talking with some of the staff, and I know that the director had mentioned it last time, they said, that darn AG wants to lock everybody up. And we see in the news a lot of these people on pretrial release are, reoffending, and then you get these comments where, everybody, no one's going to jail, but actually there are a whole lot of people, 527 of them, who are being held on pretrial, right? And so for me, that was when I went up to the three domes, that almost all exclusively pretrial detainees. And, granted, these are guys who have probably served before and they're on their third, arrest or whatever. These aren't for the most part, they're not newbies, right? They're letting the newbies out on the release and they're holding the more hardened criminals inside the facility. But thank you, Major, for your comments about that. That was pretty much the same thing that I heard.
One more last thing, sir. Just think about this. Our post standards was based on military standards. Imagine the military. They don't go out there and say, hey, do you have college credits to be a E2 or E4? No. A lot of them was based on experience. Now, those with bachelor's degree became an officer, but from E1 through E9, that's their choice. If they do have the time to go and get college credits, yes. But right now, we need the manpower, sir. That's what they're looking at. They're not going to ask you. Your relief is not going to ask, or you're not going to ask your relief, hey, you have college credits? Come and work in here. No, they just want to go home. I'm just being real. I'm just being
Major,
honest.
I agree. So I think there are issues at DOC.
Same as GPD.
Yeah.
I'll bet you.
Yeah. Well, that's why we're doing those to do the recruitment and the retention, because we do need more police officers on the streets. And when you look at crime, what is the number one deterrent of crime? It's police presence. And it's the same thing with the prison, Major.
Yes, sir.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Esther.
So, Senator, I want to refer to Major again on the facility issues here.
Okay. Well,
Because
Chief
Major
Canata, did you have
Gibson
anything on retention?
Yeah, I want to throw something in regarding retention and recruitment. That all starts when they're little kids. Go to any store, you're going to see policemen, costume or even Halloween time, nurses, doctors, firemen, fire truck, police car. Do you see corrections officer? That's where it all starts.
Yeah.
But you see prisoner
Yeah,
uniform?
you do.
That's the only input I want to give here.
I look.
That's my
That's true.
input for recruitment and retention.
Thank you. Okay. Yeah, so you know something that they're also doing in some of the schools is they're starting these junior police programs. And so I don't know if you guys, I'm not saying you need a junior corrections officer program in the elementary school, but maybe in the high school, right? Or maybe we could just I get what you're saying though, Chief. So Director and Major, if you could, facilities issues.
Okay, facility issues, I'm not sure if that you're talking about the maintenance and stuff, but the one I've been working on was, the new prison, the master plan.
Right.
And right now we're going through, working on negotiations in regards to architectural services for phase 1 of our 80-year master plan. We've had a meeting last week of DPW and the vendor that won the contract to work on this architect. But right now, Senator, the numbers are quite high for what the vendor had proposed to do phase 1. We're looking at almost about $16 million in architectural services for phase 1. That's just phase 1. They're going to go back to the table, look at their numbers, and we're going to have a few meetings in between to see if they can lower that particular number down. But even if they get it down to 10 million, in this past budget we got 5. There's 5 there, but we're going to need an additional 5 probably or more for that, just to do the design. That's not building the prison, that's the design. And the design itself could take about 2 years, depending on how many times, because they have to, there's a procedure on, you have to submit it in at 40%, 60%, 80%. And then after we have a design that's been approved, we still got to get the money to go out and actually build it, which right now we're looking at about 130 million just for phase 1. But on the architect, one other thing I want to point out on the architect that they pointed out is, even though it's phase 1, initially they need to also include all the other phases in their initial planning. The plumbing, the electrical, and all that has to go in phase 1 of the project. So that was kind of the reason why the architect is so expensive at this beginning stage of the project. But again, that's ongoing, and once we get our final numbers, we'll let the legislature know what we're looking at so we can see if there's any funding available. That's kind of the only thing I can do on my part, is do that legwork, but after that, the funding is really going to be up to the legislature and the administration to figure that out. We do have some FEMA projects going on.
What are those, Major? What are your FEMA projects?
So we have right now about 25, 27, give or take, FEMA projects. 5 more, they require some additional information, so we got until next week to provide them that additional information. But we're looking right now, Senator, at overall about 2 million worth of projects. The federal share is usually, at this estimate right now, is 1.8, and the local estimate is 200,000, because we got to pay 10% of that. And we are having our meeting with the Guam Recovery Office. One of the things, again, we're trying to look at is where do we get the money to start working on these projects once they've all been approved, because as I understand it, we have to use local funds first and then submit the documents for reimbursement through the Guam Recovery Office. But
Major, are you able to share, I get $2 million in projects, but what specifically are you trying to get repaired with FEMA?
so one of them, for example, is the reskinning of the domes. The domes received some damage. We're looking at about 500,000 for those, because each one's about 100-some thousand. So we're looking at about 500,000 there. We have some road repairs, some main generator medical area at 67,000. Visitor processing center at around $9,000 worth of repairs. We have our visitation chapel at about 51,000. RSAT building, that's 144,000 of basically repairs. We also have some perimeter fencing.
Sorry, Major. What's the status of the RSAT program if the building is in need of?
Well, there's some damage, but the program can still go on.
Okay,
but it's just replacing some of the tin and other things at certain portions of the building.
Okay.
And that was estimated from FEMA. Again, these numbers could change as we start getting the vendors coming in, doing the actual quotes and making the assessments of what needs to be real done. But we have some service gate razor wire fencing to be fixed, and that's about $71,000. The women's facility, $52,000. Post 6, there's some repairs there at $22,000.
What are the repairs at the women's facility?
Mostly just infrastructure stuff. We're also working on trying to get a generator. They have a generator, but it needs to be replaced or repaired. So we're working on that. And in fact, today I had a meeting with Homeland on that. We're going to try to apply for some grants on replacing a few of these generators.
Have you ever initiated any communication with the Office of the Governor or the Guard about the use of their generators?
No, during the storm, we did get FEMA generators, like for FEMA unit. And once they got back on island power, they took back their generator. Right now with the load shedding, of course, there's no generator, so when there's that power issue, they're out in the dark for a few hours until the power comes back on.
Yeah.
But we are trying again to work with FEMA, but this process takes time. Like even right now, even if I had all the money today, I could not really do anything at this point because the books for the new fiscal year is not open yet. They just closed out the fiscal year 2024, and so when the new budget kicks in, give GSA a few weeks to start opening before they open up the books and allow us to put requisitions in to start getting these projects. Then we have to get assessments. I got to go through that procurement process and get vendors coming in, making all these assessments and the 3 quotes and do all that stuff.
Right.
So
But
it's going to take some time.
Okay, but do you think it's feasible to ask for the Guard to allow the use of any generators that they may have? Only it was suggested by the staff this morning, so I want to follow up if you think it's feasible.
We've asked several things of the Guard, sir, and they've given us help when we have, like cots and beds and stuff like that, and with the intent of us returning it, but we haven't returned it because a lot of them got damaged.
Chamorro Barrow?
Well, they got damaged. There's not.
I see.
They were fragile. They broke. But we have worked with the Guard, and every time they do assist us whenever they can. But they have their own mission too to be prepared for. So we do go to them at times. I know the director has been in communication with them, but it's not. We got to work on getting it done ourselves. We need to get it done ourselves for our own, because these other agencies, again, they love to help, but they also have their own mission to consider.
Sure, but if the Guard has generators that are sitting idle, then if they can be used as a temporary solution while you work out.
I don't know their status.
Okay.
I don't deal with the Guard. I don't speak to anybody there, so
Maybe the director can
I wouldn't
follow
know
up
their
with
status.
the front office.
Yes, yeah, and that's why we always provide situation awareness to Civil Defense and Office of Homeland Security. Chief Kanata is our Homeland Security liaison. When any power outage and all these generators, the things that Major Lazama requests or the warden, we filter that to Chief Kanata, who lets Office of Civil Defense know about those vulnerabilities, so they're aware of it.
I think this will go under facilities issues, but so one of the things that I've been hearing consistently is from corrections officers who are telling me that they're buying toilet paper, toothpaste, shampoo, laundry soap. I heard today from a corrections officer who bought a sink. And it's very frustrating and it's disappointing, quite frankly, because what that tells me is that obviously I think is a crisis at the Department of Corrections, but it shouldn't be a crisis with toilet paper. That's something that we should have, management should have the foresight to, plan for with the planned procurement. Hey, we got X amount of doggons, we're going to need X amount of, paper toilet to last through the year, so let's procure it now. And I just, what's even more frustrating is these COs they're just resigned. They're like, oh, we just don't want to deal with it. We're just going to buy it ourselves. We don't care. Frickin' reimbursement, never mind. I don't care. I got to get it done because it's going to take forever. I'd like to see you address that, because for me, we talk about shortage of manpower. There's a lot of issues that are, could be alleviated by increasing the manpower and the number of, COs. But then there's things like this, which to me clearly come down to management problems, and things like those toiletries. I just don't get it, Director, so.
Yeah, we get that, and our supply person, again, works and reports to Major Uggan, again, the admin and the finance, and they're doing their best. One of the things I found out at a gap, that pre-trials say, sorry, we're coming in empty-handed, and you have to provide us our toilet tissues.
Well, I
and
mean,
our
it's
hygiene
toilet
products.
paper, it's, you know, it's a necessity.
That's right. So, again, like I said, how that's budgeted, how that's, you know, to make sure there's a supply, not counting that we have an increased population, right? Because that's not counted sometimes, that all of a sudden we have a surge of more pretrial detainees coming in, right? And that's what makes it challenging, because of the increased population, right? And that surge that wasn't counted on. But
I know, but I get that, Director, but this
Yeah.
is something I heard even before I became a senator. You hear it from teachers, you hear it from, you know, staff at the schools, or where, you know, we got like agencies like DOE for $500 million in the bank, and you got teachers buying paint and buying stuff out of pocket.
the other part that's
So
not,
however you're doing
yeah,
it,
the
it's
oth-
not.
The other part that's not being said, that, and this comes from our admin finances, when they go down to check the supplies, sometimes another agency got a bulk of that already. It's first come, first served sometimes down there, and took it away, right? You know, and that left us short, right? So they have to be attentive to be in touch with their GSA and the people and the contact there, and say, please hold that for us. I know we're running late, but we need to get that supply.
Is there an issue at GSA, or? I heard that part of the problem, at least from your staff, was the Department of Administration and the new financial management
Well,
system.
we were running to some problems with that new system, you know, getting out of the AS400 now and switching over to that new system. Where we actually now are getting back I'm actually hired a new ASO who has to be familiar with that, and that administrative service officer is going to have to be very familiarized with the new system. I think she's coming from the Guam Community College, so you know, she might have that kind of. She probably has that experience when it comes down to ensuring what kind of bulk on those supplies that are needed, and to ensure there's enough to budget, and ensure there's enough for that supply that are meeting these challenges that the personnel are talking about.
Okay. If you could, Directors, I committed to the staff that this is something I'd look into, and I mean, even though they're used to doing it, and obviously it's kind of what you said, they're not doing it for the pay, they're doing it just because it's not getting done.
Yeah.
It's your responsibility to make sure that happens, so please. Okay. Civil service cases and settlements. You know, I only had one question really, and I saw you put in here a lot of stuff about the double pay lawsuit, but as I'm sure you know, I was very disappointed and troubled by the settling of the recent case with the former IA head, Jeff Limo, and basically what was reported in the media and what you had shared with me in conversation was that this was the legal advice you had gotten from the Office of the AG, that they basically said, my interpretation, throw in the towel because, you know, we risk it, we could lose it all, and the guy could be back on the job, you know, with $1 million in back pay and a promotion or whatever. And I know you have a lot of other cases before the Civil Service Commission, so I just want to ask on behalf of the people of Guam, are you planning to settle all of these cases in the same way that you settled the Lima one? Is that the advice you're getting from is it the Office of the Attorney General that's advising us?
Our legal advisor, Jeff Bolton, not only represents us, he represents other line agencies. He's from the Office of Attorney General. We don't have a paid attorney on board at the Department of Corrections, so I rely on him to review the cases that he represents us on these. Each case is a different set of circumstances. You know, Limo's case, I believe they were throwing in a 60-day violation or something like that, technicality, right? So that's different from maybe the other one that we're currently looking at, Sam Donato's case, where he was promoted to major, then it was taken away, and then, you know, is that considered an adverse action or something, right? But I'm, you know, about the, you know, whether I'm going to settle every single case.
What's the other one? There's another one, is Santos.
There was Santos, Eric Santos.
Yeah, what's the center of this case?
That individual we were ordered to reinstate Santos, right? So we inherited that, right? So Both have represented us there, you know, again, in guiding us on our obligations as the order was given from the Civil Service Commission to reinstate Officer Santos. So we're complying with that order from the Civil Service Commission. But in regards to all other of the cases that are still pending, because I believe there's, I think there's some challenges on, there's some grievance, and, wait, there's a pending Sacasac case or something like that, right? That's public right now. I'm waiting for Attorney Bota to get some guidance on that, but we're not, again, I trust our guidance from the AG. When he looks at the case, and if he suggests and says, no, this looks very solid from how they handled it from the time of the internal affairs all the way, then we'll go all the way to
Yeah, that's one thing, but I think just from the perspective of, you know, the average Jose and Josefa Cruz out there is, you know, you had an individual who was trusted at the highest position to even police his own, and then, you know, lo and behold, come to find out it was the fox guarding the hen house. And I can say that because the individual was convicted, right? And I personally think the previous Attorney General could have done a lot more to prosecute all these cases. I think that the previous Attorney General dropped the ball in a lot of ways with the prosecution of this contraband scheme and conspiracy. And I think for a lot of people out there, it now just looks like the individual was rewarded, right? I mean, he's allowed to retire, given the back pay. And I think, sir, if you let me continue, I think what people maybe would have appreciated from a director is to have the director say, oh, hell no, you know what, we're going to fight this because it's not right. But I get what you're saying about, you know, listening to your attorney's advice. I just think from this side, it looks a lot like the way I described it.
Yeah. And I know that, you know, I responded to you when you asked me a little bit about the details of that case with the Limo case, right? I come from a family of attorneys. One of the biggest rules that I'm told is, I mean, one of the biggest things that can always happen is if you don't listen to your attorney, right, and don't follow the suggestion or advice, and you deviate from that, you get into, you might get into a worse type of situation, because they'll put on record, I told you this was the guidance, and if you didn't want to ignore me, you know, then it's on you. And from the experience I've had, whether it was a legal advisor guiding me when Attorney Elizabeth Banderson provided an attorney for Guam Police when I was chief of police, I'll listen to the advice of the attorney provided to me, even though it's a lot, you know, to us, it's like a loss.
Yeah, you know, it is. What's done is done, and it's disappointing.
Yep. The intelligence unit status?
Yes.
Yes, our strategic threat intelligence unit. You know, I don't want to, you know, get into detail on what they're doing with some of the.
Okay, maybe I
cases,
have
right?
some questions. Maybe I
Because
should
it's-
ask the questions. Are there reports regarding credible intelligence that led to inmates being disciplined or charged criminally? And these reports, obviously, we're talking about the intelligence unit. Are you allowed to just say generally how you've established an intelligence unit under your leadership?
Yeah, I believe with some of the reports and some of the information that they've came to us, it led to us on the, alerted us to find contraband, which resulted in disciplinary action of inmates and also potential prosecution.
Do you, or have you had, or been in receipt of any reports relative to staff misconduct?
Right now, I have some information that was shared with me by the police commander recently that the STIU might have some information about correction staff sent to the Office of Attorney General.
STIU?
The Strategic Threat Intelligence Unit.
Can you describe what that is for the people watching?
That's the intelligence unit,
okay,
right, that we have, right? But I haven't followed up with that with the STIU to find out, is there any, to verify that and validate that. According to police commander of the Guam Police Department, he's seen a form of, that they're forwarding something to the Office of Attorney General regarding a member of the corrections.
So you weren't briefed on that?
No, I wasn't briefed. And that's why I'm having our internal affairs follow up on that.
Okay.
Yeah.
How often do you receive reports from the intelligence unit? Do you have standing weekly meeting, or is it just whenever they send you something?
Well, they report directly to the warden, so the warden's
Okay.
supposed to actually, it's through the warden who's supposed to brief me if there's any, you know, very important, significant intel information they're coming from. Because what the STA, what they receive to, I share that with Chief Kanata, who shares it with the Marianas Regional Fusion Center,
Okay.
Office of Defense and Homeland Security.
How do you get on the unit, and what skills are necessary to be assigned to the intelligence unit? Do you require members of the unit to have a certain amount of experience?
Yeah, well, the warden, you know, because they fall under him,
Okay.
he's provided me some candidate, you know, the candidate who will be assigned there, recommendations even from Major Lozama too, right?
Ultimately, do you make the final decision about who is on the intelligence unit?
Well, I make the final decision if it's a personal order that's being given to me to assign someone there, right?
Okay.
So it's up to me, my decision when they say that they're going to assign this. I'll give the last blessings.
All
of
right.
that.
Just because I'd received concerns from staff that you may have relatively inexperienced officers in the unit. Would you care to address that? I'd heard a
Yeah,
report that
well,
you had one officer in the unit who's been
I'll-
working less than a year.
I'll just say there was no strategic threat intelligence unit before I came on board, right? And in other prison and jurisdictions, you have an intelligence unit established to find out what's going on with the inmates, right? The closest we had would be, and this is what I discovered when I first came on board, is that our internal affairs were sometimes juggling between doing internal affairs and doing and collecting intel for intelligence purposes.
Right.
And to me, that's a sort of that can fall into a technicality, because if they summon that internal affairs and let's say it led to criminal prosecution from the intelligence information, that internal affairs would be having a problem justify how they could be given the mission to investigate corrections malfeasance, you know, employees at the same time they're doing an investigation that leads to prosecution. You have to stay on just one side, either be a criminal investigator, intelligence, or be internal affairs for administrative and investigations against employees of the Department of Corrections.
Okay. The K-9 unit, what division is the K-9 unit under?
The K-9 unit's under, again, the warden.
Okay.
With security operations. I was just brief. The dogs are being utilized. They have not had any major findings. They run about 50 times through operations, mail checks incoming and cell inspections. No vehicle inspections were conducted, to no policy unit directive guiding them in that. So that's a gap we gotta do in terms of policy-wise.
How many dogs do you have?
Two. There's Saba and Alpha right now. Now,
Was Saba the one that bit the handler?
yeah, so I believe it was Saba who bit, but he's been cleared for duty already.
Okay.
And the certifications for one of our handlers, Afrigui, is going to expire September 1, 2024, and handler Flores will expire October 1st, 2024. So we're now working with Guam Police Department, SWAT, so that they can maintain their certifications, you know, because they constantly have to be busy training, so
Right.
that if they ever do, you know, a search with the dogs, they can justify it, especially if they find themselves in court when it leads to some prosecution. That's what the K-9.
So how many officers did you say are assigned to K-9? Two?
Two.
Two, okay. And they're both certified? Well, they're certified,
They're both
they're running
certified
out.
handlers. We have
Oh.
no instructors.
Okay.
Our instructor was the former deputy
Aflui.
director,
Right.
the Atogui.
Atoigui, sorry. And so he has, he certified both them, individuals?
He certified one of them, I believe. The other
Okay.
one was certified off island.
And how effective has your K-9 unit been in discovering drugs at the facilities?
You know, I'd say just based on what they said, they have not had any major findings and trace amounts of findings. So I have to get back with the commander there and find out from, you know, if there's been any case that they're linked to with the Guam Police
I see.
Department. and
So
Sheriff's
I mean, there have been drugs discovered in the Department of Corrections, obviously, right, over the many times. But so do these canines go into these areas where
Yeah,
you have
let-
previously just
Yeah,
Major?
let me find out from that. Major Lozama actually
Okay,
might
for
have
the K-9 unit, they do operate up at the Dock Correctional Facility during visitors' processing times when they're having visitation. They do assist, they do their operation, and they do walk around the compound with Alpha, even during visitation. They've been on the floor going around, and even at the dome area. I do request from them if they can make a search when we receive any intelligence report or any prisoner that has unusual behavior, or let's say there's a disturbance, any incident, I always request if the K-9 could go and make a check on the units. But yes, they do assist during visitation, the incoming and outgoing inspection. This is when the family members bring in incoming items like clothing, hygiene, or what?
Oreos. This morning I saw someone got Oreos.
Yes, they do. They were assisting the visitation officers.
Okay, and so
for
they're
the
just,
incoming and outgoing.
they're like sniffing the boxes coming
They,
in and the visitors?
I believe they're trained to detect any drugs or whatever they were trained for, whether it's weapons, cell phones, or what. They should be able to detect those contraband.
Okay.
Okay, so as far as vehicle inspections, I have not heard their operation on that yet, but I'm pretty sure even the warden is aware. Whenever we have these operations, we try not to make anyone know about it because word gets around faster than the internet, okay, or whatever. So that's why, like they always say, the walls have ears. They do. So try to make it where not everyone knows what is the operation. Make it covert,
Okay.
so that way nobody knows. And then when that thing happens, we do find, just like shakedowns, I said, do not tell the incoming shift that we're doing it. Do not let them know, but let the commander know that I want a shakedown conducted. Sure enough, without advance notice, they do find a contraband because nobody knew that it was going to be an unannounced shakedown. So that's how I like it operated, where no one knows what's going to happen. It's like a surprise shakedown or inspection or search.
So, Senator, to your question, I guess they turned around when they saw our dogs doing all those searches. And, so they're effective in deterrence, in terms of
Okay,
deterrence.
thank you. So, at the inception, it was a little bit of a rough ride, but so you're saying the K-9 program is working?
Yes.
Okay, thank you. Training.
Training?
Is there on training?
Oh, no, there's no training in there.
Okay, that's fine.
I think the new Hagåtña Detention Facility?
Yes, so I heard a little bit about you engaging with the court. Is that accurate?
It's accurate. I just want to it's really premature in terms of some of the pending discussions, but of course it is always known that Hagåtña Detention Facility, where I think Chief Kanata right now is the acting commander until Captain Pacagui returns back. It's always been suggested from the Hagåtña restoration, planning, look at Hagåtña, that the detention facility in Hagåtña, it's old. It's been built since '92, and they have to have some plans about where would it be relocated and what's going to happen with it. So I just like to say that there's going to be some discussions on that, and I'd like to just give a chance to provide the judiciary a chance to provide some sharing of conversations on that with the new facility.
Okay, so I was aware that you were engaging in discussions with the judiciary, but I just wondered if that contradicted at all with the facility master plan. I know it contradicts with the Hagåtña restoration plan, which they don't want no prison, no holding facility here.
The new prison, I believe, and Major again will say this, on the first phase, there is some plans besides the medical and behavioral center on phase 1, and a new parking, some area for as much as 350 capacity. But what reason why we're just talking about Hagåtña Detention facility situation? Because again, it's pre-trial. There's over 200 pre-trial there for it was only meant for 130, and we take care of the overflow. But another challenge, of course, is we average 60 transports of pre-trial back and forth to the court, right? Using our transportation security both in the beginning in the morning and toward the late part of the day to bring them back and forth. And that's really challenging. And it's one of the part of the subjects of the conversation we'll be having with judiciary as we're talking about the challenge of, transporting pretrial detainees from Manila back and forth, right?
Yeah, so we have in the facility master plan the ability to hold these pretrial detainees, but now you're telling me that it would just be more convenient where over there by the court, because you can walk across when they have a hearing?
Well, the thing about it is one of the biggest challenges in Manila is segregation. You can't have, it's not really viable to have sentenced prisoners in the vicinity of pretrial detainees who haven't been adjudicated.
I get that, Director, but it's, we, a lot of good people put together this facility master plan, and, I just hate to see when we have a plan and then, are you going rogue on this plan?
Again, like I said, it's just a thought experiment.
Okay.
Okay?
Thank you. All right. Do you have prior obligations that we need to address?
I believe so. We do major, again, the prior debt obligations. The settlement.
Yes, Senator, we did do a memo. I don't have it with me today, but we did do a memo to BBMR, I believe, and the front office about prior years. A lot of it is medical. We owe a lot of vendors for medical. We have a few employee settlements to take care of. Even like the workman's comp for Robert Camacho, we owe the family over $100,000 on that one. We owe a dialysis company, I think, about $1 million for one of the inmates that had dialysis before he passed away. But we did put all that together, and we did forward it to the administration. I think it's somewhere around $7 million, give or take, of prior year obligations. This is from 23 and 22 and those other years there, but we're trying to address it.
Did you hear back from the administration?
I know the director's working with them on that, and he's made his communications with the administration on that. We just let him know this is what we owe. But as far as it coming in, we haven't got anything.
Administration Ed Burns.
Is there anybody who wishes to make public comment? Okay. Well, Director, I saw here in your closing, did you want to read that off? In closing, the corrections officers are requesting for their pay increase, like GPD, because the incentive pay, which is 25% hazardous pay, could be taken away. It is not a law. The pay raise is well deserved due to the added responsibilities of overcrowding, dangerous working condition, and taking care of behavioral prisoners. We now have a total of 174 corrections officers, which is not enough to cover both Hagåtña and adult correctional facilities. Your consideration on this matter is greatly appreciated. So, Director, in touring the Manila facility, I did see, and it gave me a much better understanding about just the levels of staffing and how so many of the issues and challenges that we're facing in the Department of Corrections are directly tied to the manpower shortages, right? I mean, some of the prisoners there were telling me, they can't do this program, they can't do that program, they can't go to school because, we don't have enough officers to escort people to watch them over there, and they don't even have and this is a little bit ironic, the freedom of movement that they would normally have if you were staffed adequately. And in fact, many of them say that there's a control of movement, pretty much all the time because you don't have the manpower And we all know without the manpower, you're creating dangerous situations for, not just the corrections officers, but for the inmates and the detainees as well. And, one of the prisoners, or I don't know if she was an inmate or detainee in Post 8, I thought it was interesting because in just talking with the staff and some of the inmates and detainees there, they were consistent in asking about things like, the air conditioning, for example. So you have air cons down in 2 of the domes, right? And what's the status with that? I actually need to ask about that. What's the status with those ACs? And what type of, because I was under the impression you had an indefinite quantity bid for that. Maybe I'm mistaken.
No, the air con at the dome, sir, are $45,000 a piece.
Okay.
We don't have the money. We did assessment 2022, 23, before the storm even came. Those air cons were down. And we did an assessment. We had a company come in and give us a price quote, but we had no money. To fix all those air cons up there, we're roughly needing about $600,000. Because I have a whole list of it, of all the air cons that are down and the estimated costs based on what we've spent in the past for previous air cons. And we're looking at about $600,000. The air cons are the dome or the 25 ton, or they're the big ones. Mm-hmm. There's no IDQ for that.
Okay.
What we would have to do is identify first we need to go and make a new assessment because it was like 2 years old. And then we have to go and locate the money to fix it and put it out for bid. Because it's over 25,000, so we'll have to do the RFP, and there's a timeline for that. But right now, it's just we don't have the money.
I know, and I think it was a couple of hearings ago, I had expressed to you, we hear this a lot, we don't have the money, so, Fen put it in the budget request. So did you put that in the budget request?
We have $150,000 for capital outlay in the next fiscal year's budget. That's the money we could probably use to fix it, but that would only take care of, Hagåtña right now needs a total replacement. That's 130-some thousand just for Hagåtña. That quote is 4 years old when we did that one. But we do have like 150 for capital outlay. We can use that money to start working on it. But we're probably going to need more after that because that will only take a few units. And the thing with the air cons, a lot of them are old, so they work today, but in 3 months they may go down. And they're not small air cons. They're the big 5, 10, 15-ton air cons. So it requires us to go out for bid for those
Correct,
things.
yeah. DOEs have the same issue where they actually have to fabricate these, 50-ton chillers out of, they're kind of MacGyvering it. Ma'am?
Yes, Senator. I'm Teresa Tayama, casework administrator. I was wanting to report that since the past year, we've been able to double our size of staff capacity from 3 to 6. But I would like to request for an additional 6 more social workers to my team. In addition, I would like your consideration for a...
Ma'am, I did receive your correspondence.
Thank you so much.
Of course I did. But the issue was during the budget process, some of my knucklehead colleagues decided that they didn't want to allow amendments with appropriations, and so we weren't able to add anything to the budget with appropriations. And they came out with a supplemental budget bill that I still feel falls short, and it does not include that, but I will work hard to find the funding to, 6, maybe 3, Messiah?
3 more is
We'll
fine.
see what we can do, ma'am, but I did receive your communication, and it was my intention to amend that in the budget. However, we lost the opportunity to, go figure, a budget with no appropriations. Wild. So I'll work on that, ma'am.
Thank you, sir.
But like I was saying, Director, so in talking with inmate staff, they were bringing up things like the ACs and having to buy toilet tissue and sinks out of pocket. But one of the people at Post 8 asked me to do what I can do to get more officers hired to the Department of Corrections. And her reasoning was exactly what I said, with a shortage of officers to adequately supervise the inmates, it really impacts, obviously, not just the safety, but even the rehabilitation. And this is what this woman had said. She said, there's no rehabilitation because we don't have the flexibility because of the lack of manpower at the facility. And so, like I said at the beginning of the hearing, I think you guys are facing a lot of chronic recruitment and retention issues similar to what GPD was facing. And I think that we've addressed those issues for the Guam Police Department, and it's now my intention, I am introducing the bill today to do the same for the Department of Corrections. Nanga fan on the bonus, we'll see about the bonus, Kay. Let me look at the numbers, but yeah. So that was light, but I did want to share this. As you know, I meet with many family members of inmates and detainees, and even, you know, some family members of corrections officers, and I had a letter that I wanted to read in the closing here, and it's addressed to me, Hafaday Senator Barnett. I wanted to thank you for listening to the people of Guam, and more specifically for the work you do as chair of the Guam DOC Oversight Committee. I send this letter as the mother of a son serving his sentence there, and on behalf of other families that have loved ones going through the same. More recently, there have been some improvements put in place that made for a slightly better quality of life for the inmates. Unfortunately, there are quite a few more that are still required for health and safety concerns. I list these separately below. Improvements, so I guess these are the improvements. The visitation is increased to twice monthly. It has?
Major Lizama, is that?
Yes, there's the visitation and also the incoming. However, if their unit was placed on lockdown, they lose out. So, you know, they have to be in their best behavior.
Of course.
It's really up to the warden, you know, if they're going to go ahead and add on. But just want you to try and see that when you only have 4 officers processing and doing inspection of all the items coming in,
Right.
that's a lot of work.
It is, ma'am, and if I could just say so, I was at the visitation center this morning and I mentioned the Oreos. So they don't, you know, when you bring your nephew or your godson or your whoever Oreos, they don't just give the package of Oreos. They have to open it, inspect it, and then they're placing it into another approved container, right? And so
Yes,
I understand and this goes back to the manpower issues. So those improvements have been made, and I know that they're very well received by obviously not just the inmates and the detainees, but the families of these individuals. And if you would allow me to continue, visitation increased to twice monthly, 1 weekday, 1 weekend. Family friends are now allowed to bring small containers of snacks and 1 canned drink for all visitors and inmate. There's also been an improvement in the intake of health and comfort items, which are increased to twice a month. And now the improvements needed, according to the writer of the letter. Air conditioning units are subject to frequent outages and repairs are not a priority. Temperatures of 85 to 90 degrees in inmate spaces, not uncommon during down periods due to no fresh air ventilation. And I can attest to this, and I was in Dome 25A, I think the AC's out. And you know, it's not even a hot day, but there was no wind, and you could, you know, I felt like I was in one of those classrooms that didn't have AC on a Marshall Sablon. So again, this goes back to the AC repair, right? Okay. Water leakage and shower fixtures, 24/7. Food service, meal portions are not enough for grown men. Hot food is often distributed cold, and there's not enough meat and vegetables. Family members supplement their diet with limited packaged food items during the bi-monthly intake. Library is not open, and no computers, current books to allow for legal research and or reading. No coordinated outdoor exercise activities and or frequent yard time. And I'm guessing that the last one is, again, due to the manpower, right? So is it pretty much just halfway house and minimum security that's able to avail of outside time?
Everyone is affected. If there's a major incident,
Okay.
everyone will be placed on institutional lockdown until everything is clear for safety and security reasons. And that is because all the officers are responding to that unit. Correct. Where the officer, recently one of our officers got attacked. Three prisoners got attacked, our one officer. And luckily the officer did not have any serious injuries. That was my concern. So he's okay. He didn't have any injuries. I guess he has good self-defense techniques, and, you know, he's good. So I'm just saying, you know, that's the reason why we have these lockdowns, because we want to make sure, although there's like an average of 20 to 25 officers on duty, those are about the same amount that's responding along with the special operations team to that building where the incident is at. So far, 01's working on looking at transferring inmates that are problematic for our institution for off-island transfer. So I'm just waiting for that to happen,
federal?
where they'll be transferred off-island to the U.S. because that's where their demeanor, maybe they can help him out, or, you know, because here in Guam, that's not the kind that we can have.
What Major Lozama had just indicated just a few minutes ago is that I have the power, if I see there's an inmate, you know, who presents a problem and could be a danger not only to just staff but other inmates too, that I have the power to have the individual transferred. I don't want to mention the name yet, but I'll just say that casework provided me a package of an inmate, and we're just looking at a possibility of a transfer. Right now, we currently have how many off-island, Major Egan? 12.
And these are all
Hardcore,
individuals
like
who
convicted
okay.
murder,
I see.
convicted murderers, right? So,
Wow.
so I'm just looking at, because it does send some message among the population that taking it serious if this person, this inmate is starting to violate rules and be a security risk to my officers and to staff and other inmates.
Do you think that any of these individuals maybe want to become problem prisoners and want to get into trouble so that they can possibly be shipped off to, you know, unfortunately, a better facility?
Well, you know, again, it's complicated. You know, it's a complex thing, but why other directors had transport the current 12 that were out there were for various reasons, but there's a process that involves the Attorney General.
Or they vet it
involves the vet to look at this individual's history.
Okay, so the last thing I wanted to talk about was up at the domes, the restroom facilities, and that was one of the concerns mentioned in the letter, but, you know, I don't even know what to say, but these are, so the domes, they get 2 toilets, and it's made out of an old container, and it's decrepit, rusty, you know, there's no door in one of the toilets. So, I mean, what's our intent here? Are we just going to leave that? Is there any intention to repair those facilities or otherwise improve them, or is it just something you haven't gotten to? Did I just go on a bad day? Because it looked pretty bad.
Well, just to let you know, while we're also planning the new prison, you know, we've successfully got Post 18 renovated.
Correct,
DPW also authorized, and I just had mentioned that.
Right.
To pull in, I would always support that if the warden and Major Lozama coordinated with Major Uggan, looked at those areas at the dome, especially the restroom facilities, that you know, what kind of mitigation is needed to make it, you know, suitable for the individuals that are housed there, but also make it just ensure it doesn't compromise security too while they're doing that.
Yeah, no,
That's
I
the
get that. You know, and I was shocked. I met with a family member of a person who's incarcerated up there, and they had asked me, in sharing, you know, a lot of the conditions, they said, you know, you talk about the schools being inspected by public health. Is DOC inspected by public health? And, you know, honestly, I didn't know the answer until today when I asked public health, and they do not have any role whatsoever at the Department of Corrections, at least as from the person I spoke to. Is that accurate?
No.
Okay. So what?
And the reason why I say no, sir, is because during the COVID pandemic, public health has been coming out, especially if there's a report of tuberculosis.
Oh. I mean, so they come out and they responded because it was COVID and TB, but they don't come and inspect the safety or health and sanitation of the facility in Manila or Hagåtña.
Well, they can.
I mean, they could, yeah, but they don't,
can.
right? Okay.
I just want to chime in, Senator, that, you know, again, thank you and appreciate for you coming and visiting.
Yeah.
We're always inviting individuals to come into our facility, and we've had some from the federal side coming in to Manila from the U.S. Marshals, Bureau of Prison. I believe there's a representative. They're coming in to look at some of these things too, and then provide a report to us in terms of what they see, the same observations that you're seeing. They'll provide that report, and then that conversation's going to, of course, take place because, you know, that reaches up to even to the federal district court
Right.
judge.
Yeah,
Gatewood.
so you never had any of these federal entities come and visit and say, hey, you know, you guys got taken over by the feds before, and it looks kind of like you're heading in that same direction?
Well, I think the conversation among the U.S. Marshals and you know, the feds, that they came both to the Hagåtña facility and the overcrowding up in Manilao, is that their pretrial detainees that we're holding or for disciplinary action is being moved up to Manilao, you know, for safeguarding. That's where they generate their interest to say, if you guys need the resources and there's a lack of resources, we went in on what's the status of that.
And then Senator, what would happen if the the healthcare workers came and did an inspection? Then what would be the outcome?
Yeah, I don't know. But I think it was more brought up so that I just think there was a family member who is saying that the conditions are inhumane, and if nobody's checking on them, how would the public know? And so I think that's kind of where she was coming from. I get what you're saying. If they go and inspect DOC and it fails, we're going to have to close it down, and where's everyone going to go? But I think the point was
we'll
more.
work online.
Of course, yeah. But you know, the point obviously was that there are some significant. I mean, I saw myself very significant public health violations taken on at the prison. Okay.
Yes, sir. One more thing to note on Major Lizama again. So you're talking about public health as well. We do have our prisoners' handbook, and prisoners are aware that our agency or department is held to higher standards, especially with sanitation. So we have to ensure that we have adequate cleaning supplies available for the prisoners to clean their areas. Now, as far as showers, they have to make sure they take their showers every day, and there's also adequate personal hygiene. The government is responsible to ensure that there's adequate supplies of toilet tissue, cleaning supplies, personal hygiene, beddings, towels, and mattresses. Those are government items issued. It's also placed in a government items record. It's a record that we
Right.
keep in their jacket of what was issued, to include cups. We're supposed to issue all of these items to them when they first arrive.
Is that happening?
We don't have cups. We do have brand new uniform shirts. We're waiting for more beddings and towels because the population went up. We don't just issue one bed sheet. It has to be two. One to cover the mattress and one to cover themselves. Okay, because if the aircon is on, they complain it's cold. If the aircon doesn't work, they complain it's hot. I say, you know what, just be patient, okay? But we do allow for them to go ahead and request for the fans. If their family wants to donate fans for them to use, they are allowed to have their families bring in the electric fans.
Okay.
Yes,
Thank you, Major.
you're welcome.
That's that.
Senator, any big ticket item donation has to be cleared with the Office of the Governor's.
Okay.
person.
All right.
Yes, make
So
sure.
hopefully you get more toilet paper. All right. Okay.
Could I add one more thing?
Yes,
Because
ma'am.
we didn't discuss this. So we were talking about incoming and outgoing items. There is one thing that hasn't been done, and we've been waiting for it. Both the officers and the prisoners and the family is to open the canteen so that there will be no more inspection of incoming items. But that has to go up for bid, which it just never happened.
Yeah. What's the status for that?
Yeah.
Sir, we have no place to do a canteen. The canteen that we're calling for is a delivery system, but we have no internet, we have no infrastructure to operate a canteen. So until those things are taken care of, we're not going to be able to do it. I mean, there's no location. We have our buildings
I see.
are dilapidated inside.
Right.
We have no space, and we don't want the vendor going into the facility because we really have no space for it. So we have to do a delivery system. But we have no internet or anything like that to do it. And so if Major Lizama wants to work on the scope of work, she can work on it and do it, because I'm not going to work on a half-assed project if we don't have the right infrastructure in place to make it work the right way. We have a software for it. We just got a new software, Ven Engine. It has a commissary module, but again, until I get the internet.
Let's not be negative about
we've
this,
done all
Major Uggan. I'm just
talking,
bringing
please.
it up.
Please, I'm talking.
I really don't
Okay,
appreciate how you talk about me in front of everyone.
You can do the RFP if you want, okay? But anyway, until we get the right infrastructure, Senator, we're not going to be able to move forward with no commissary, because it's a very lengthy process, and we have to have the vendors. We got some vendors that want to do it, but they don't want to work in the compound. And so we need a delivery system, and we need a mechanism in place for them to order. We have a software, but the software can't really work until I get internet to all the housing units. And we have made an assessments on that. We're working with the front office on the BEAD program. Hopefully the BEAD, the federal government with the internet access program, DOC is included in that. So we're waiting for that, and then we can move forward with those other projects. But right now, it's just not going to go nowhere.
Director, is there anything else you'd like to add before we close?
No, I think that it's been explained both by Major Lizama, I appreciate her, and Major Uggan in their
Thank you, sir.
response to your question
Thank you,
about the
thank you.
canteen.
I meant on anything else. Is there anything else that you would like to add before we close?
No, again, I just appreciate, again, your visit up to the Department of Corrections and holding this oversight hearing so that we can have the opportunity to share some of the issues that are very vital and important for the members of the public to know about the Department of Corrections.
Thank you, Director Berdallo. If there are no further questions or comments, this concludes this oversight hearing. The committee will continue to accept written statements on today's hearing within 10 business days from today, which may be mailed to my office on the second floor of the Guam Congress Building at 163 Chalan Santa Papa in Hagåtña. You may also send your statements to us at malafunction@guamlegislature.org. That's MALAFUNKSHUN@guamlegislature.org. Sidus Masi for your participation. This public hearing is adjourned at 4 p.m. Chamorro Standard Time. Guahusi Senador Chris Malafunction Barnett. Hasta. Adios.